Long time no see, everybody. We're back. I know it's been a while. Happy St. Patty's Day. Love the jersey, by the way. Again, I know we
Yep.
talked about it, but love it. Yeah, I know. Last week was it was just a hectic week. Honestly, like just didn't have any
Yeah.
time. So it is what it is. It
I
happens.
was I was doing midterms, buddy. Like that's
Also
how
worked out great.
yeah, so I'm actually on spring break for the next like week and then I'm on to the last half before I finish up my bachelor's degree. So we are approaching the finish line here.
That's exciting.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was funny though because my friend was he was in New York, right?
Mhm.
And I'm a big Nintendo nerd, right? And
Nice.
so he got me just this little guy, this little toad.
Little Toad.
So I'm like, I'm gonna cherish him for the rest of my life.
Toad is my favorite character to use in any form of Mario Kart.
I love him. Oh
Toad
yeah,
is Toad is absolutely goated in Mario Kart, in my opinion.
because he's so small and
He's
he
small, and the car that he uses with the wheel combination and
yep.
the I don't know what they call it, like the kite on top is like
He's
it's a
got a
deadly
great
combination.
combo. It's deadly and he's fast, right? Because you got like a big guy like Bowser, like you're gonna weigh down a little bit.
Yeah, oh yeah, 100%.
Yes, we got man. It's gonna be a hectic last couple weeks we got coming up here. Lots to talk about today. Last two games we'll kind of cover a little bit. We're gonna more or less kind of it's happened a couple of days ago, so we're not gonna really worry about that. But we'll talk about going into this little road trip tonight. Another road trip for the Flames going into tonight. We'll take a look at the standings on the east and the west side of things.
Yeah.
Got a little bit of news as well too, and we'll roll from there. Sound good?
Yeah, we got a big game tonight for sure. Nationally, well, if you're in Canada, excuse me,
Yep.
nationally televised on Amazon Prime. Is it Amazon Prime exclusive? Like there's no other, right?
Yes, it is
Okay.
Prime exclusive. Yeah,
So
a
that's
lot of the
what's
Prime games, I think,
yeah.
because it's they're trying it for the Canadian. It's always been like last week
Yeah.
it was Ottawa, Detroit,
Hmm.
Toronto, San Jose, blah blah
Yeah.
blah. Right?
And we'll get into it a little later, but I saw the NHL on their Twitter account posted a thing about will Jonathan Huberdeau reach 30 goals this year, which I think he will. He's only got 5 to go.
It'll be
So
close. Yeah,
it'll
it'll
be
be close.
close.
Cool. Let's dive into it. So we know we got some lineups for tonight, thanks to one Derek Willis here. So for those of you who are stuck behind a rock, Zori got a nice 2-game suspension against when he was playing Vancouver last Wednesday. Probably the appropriate thing, just because I get defending his teammate. Did you end up seeing what Zori did last
I
week?
did see it, and like I can understand the players' safety, just wanting to. I don't want to say the word punish, but just like I guess some form of like we got to give him something. So like unfortunate, but what are you gonna do?
There's nothing he can do, right?
No, no.
Backlund, of course, who was injured as well in that game, hence the retaliation. He's out week to week, and a really, really bad time of the year for that to happen. As we'll get into it as well with the standings, but we have lineups for tonight, so they're really pushing D Wolf here. The last 20 games or so, as
They're gonna ride him.
starting again tonight in Toronto to take on the Leafs. Just looking at the lineups here, so you got Huberdeau, Kadri, Pospisil. You got Morgan Frost being paired up here with Matthew Coronado and Blake Coleman. He's going to kind of slide in there a little bit for Backlund. Same thing with Sharon Govich here being on that third line.
Mm-hmm.
Dryden Hunt and Adam Klopko were called up. Farabee's going to play alongside Sharon Govich there. Lomberg with Rooney there on the fourth with Klopka. And then again, your usual suspects here on defense with Hanley and Uyghur, Ball and Anderson, Bean and Pahal. And again, with Dustin Wolf starting. So, yeah, center depth against the Avalanche, and then obviously tonight, because there's no Connor Zara here, is definitely going to be tested here.
Sure.
What do you like? What do you not like about lineups going into tonight against Toronto?
I think I would argue to say that maybe the third line is not technically the third line. I think that you might see a lot of Farabee, Sharon Govich, and Hunt tonight. I think that I think Husk is going to try to get them going a little bit more. I know that there's definitely some more expectations for Sharon Govich with the goal scoring where it is currently. They just need more of it, and I think that the center depth it's not great. Obviously, again, like not having Zari in the lineup is definitely unfortunate, especially in a game like this tonight. But I think overall, it's just kind of what you'd expect at this point. Back end is fine. I'm not really surprised, Kyle, that the Flames are really going to ride Dustin Wolf down a stretch here because it's such a close, it's such a close race at this point. And as you know, every point matters. And with the way that Wolf has been playing, it's not necessarily a knock per se on Vladar, but it's just that you want to go with the guys that give you the best chance to win on a
Yeah.
night, especially again in these big games. Colorado, and you got Toronto, and then all these these big time teams that you're facing off against, and it's gonna be a challenge to the end. But I think the one thing that I take away is prior to the game against Colorado, Blake Coleman was talking to the media, and he said, and I think the Flames even shared it on a graphic, saying that look, we have enough talent, we have enough something along the lines of like togetherness and depth that we can really do something here, and there's no reason why we can't you know make a run at this right now. And I like that. I like that mindset that you're obviously now we're a handful of games past the deadline. We know where we are. We know what the team we have at this point, and now it's about making a run at it. And I know that a lot of people didn't necessarily like the last time that I said that I thought the Flames should go and make a run for it, but nonetheless, I think it's much more valuable down the road that this team find a way to get into the playoffs. And even if they're there for a short period of time, I mean, you're there. And I think I think that's really important for the development of this team moving forward.
It's going to be very. Whoa, I don't know what happened there. Sorry, I just heard like voices in the back. I heard my voice in the background. Anyway, yeah. So I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens down the stretch, and we'll bring up the standing up afterwards because it is so close. When you look at the overall standings
Super
and then you
close,
look at the West, everything is close. You're close from being in the playoffs or being a bottom 10 team. Like,
oh yeah.
I think like even just looking at the schedule coming up, you got this 4-game swing now coming up where Flames have a back-to-back now. You got Toronto tonight. You got the Rangers tomorrow night. I think they have the Devils Thursday, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they do. That's the game. It's going to be a fun game for the both of us.
Yep.
Be really curious to see if Markstrom starting tonight for the Devils.
I wouldn't be surprised if he starts Thursday night.
He actually has been struggling a lot of late. He gave up 6 goals to the Penguins in his last game. So I think you were mentioning to me that like, and I'm sure a lot of Flames fans would agree that this is kind of like, it's similar to last year, right? He got hurt. He was playing at a high level, then gets hurt, comes back, and now he's kind of struggling. Is it something that he can recover from, or do you think there's just not enough time left this year?
There's certainly time.
Does he need more games is the question I'm at. I guess more the question.
Yeah. And they're going to get him to play more games, obviously, because the Devils are in their own hunt, right? But like just past experience with him, like, like that. It's just we've had enough of a runway with him where we kind of know what we're getting, right? Because when he's on, he's on. Right?
He's on.
He's
100%.
One of the best goalies in the league. But
fantastic.
There's so many times, and I've said it before, where Flames drop the puck 2 minutes in on goal, right? And it's Markstrom net, right? Yeah. Softy goes in, right? Mm-hmm. Like you've seen that too many times with Markstrom. So maybe you're seeing that same sort of thing. But anyway, regardless, it's an interesting road trip coming up because I like to think that it's going to be tough tonight because you don't have Zari and losing Backlund, fair. But huge. I think, well, yes and no. Like, you're losing the leadership aspect of it and the third line center depth of it. Fair. But I think he's been criticized fairly recently, at least in the past 20, 30 games or so, because the speed from him, fair enough, he's older, right?
Yeah.
Just isn't really matching up with some of these younger guys that he's being paired up against in the other depth roles and other lineups, hence Colorado last week. So, like you're losing a big part of that in the leadership and not having that voice in the locker room. And he's probably still there for all we know. But
100%.
But it gives guys an opportunity like Morgan Frost here, who I think for me, throughout the whole time Backlund's gone now, week to week, at least for the remainder of the week here, he's going to be the biggest player here.
Sure.
Watch, right? He's a key aspect because you now have to step into a role here. Hey, dude, we acquired you for a reason, man. Like we need to get something going here, right? They need to see something. Mm-hmm. We need to see more from Frost and Farabee, basically. I think Farabee's done a fairly decent job. I want to see more from Morgan because I think he's going to have a great opportunity tonight, matched up with Coronado. I'm okay with Coleman being there, actually. I don't mind it.
Yeah.
But you got to, and especially, too, like, it's a really good opportunity tonight because I did mention before we jumped on that the Leafs have lost 5 of their last 6 games, right? So they're on a bit of a losing stretch, and it feels like there could be an opportunity here where you can go in and maybe just surprise some people, and who knows what can happen, right? But I think the 2 names that you can look at here at least definitely is Morgan Frost, but we've said it again, man. Sharon Govich has to get going here a little bit.
Been really kind of a disappointment with him throughout the year. I thought that, especially if you look at the way last year went for him in his first year in Calgary, I think he surprised some people with how solid of a year he really had.
Yeah.
But this is something that unfortunately doesn't surprise me as much from the experience that I've had watching him in New Jersey, is that he will go very hot and cold. Similar to like what you were saying about Markstrom, is like when Sharangovich is on his game and playing well, it's really, really like impressive to watch. But when he's cold like he is right now, it almost at times looks like he's not even on the ice. Like he's kind of just like hovering and not really being aggressive. I don't want to, this is not a knock on him, but I would say that I am keeping my eye a lot on Coronado moving forward, because if you go back a couple weeks ago, he was really, really on a roll and he was really finding the net consistently. I want to see more of that here, because I feel like that he could really be a big player in just getting the offense going moving forward. And I think a game like tonight against the struggling Leafs team could be that type of game. And we talked about it before, we jumped on that. I think the biggest thing for the Leafs is that their goaltending just has not been there. And I think that this is one of those times that we've talked about going into games where the goaltending suspect might be an opportunity to pot a couple of goals and kind of get your goal scoring going a little bit more.
And I believe it's Joseph Woll who's going to be in net tonight for the Leafs. Similar record with him and Dustin Wolf, actually. Both have 22 wins, 13 losses there for Wolf and 12 for Woll. So that's the matchup tonight. News-wise, with this matchup, nothing crazy. Just trying to see here. I mean, obviously it's screaming Leafs tonight, but still, and you imagine that they maybe try to find a way to bounce back. But I still like an opportunity to take advantage of a team that has been struggling. And, you got to do it tonight, because then obviously you got to turn around. You got to face a really revitalized Rangers team tomorrow night.
I think the big thing going into this road trip, really quick, because we'll have things to talk about both with tonight's game and then the game against the Rangers prior to Thursday's game against the Devils, is that with the Rangers, it's a very up and down team. They had a good performance against Columbus, but then you followed up yesterday with a pretty down loss to the Oilers. I mean, granted, it is the Oilers, but at the same time, like, you could have won that game. It was a low scoring game and you just, you didn't get it done, especially at home. So, it depends on what Rangers team the Flames are going to meet that night. But tonight, I think it would just be good to find a way to get a win, because then going into the road trip, just beginning the road trip on a high note, I think is so important for a team, especially in this playoff stretch, this next 15, 16 games here. So this to me, and I know we've said this at numerous times throughout the year, but like this is like the big moment here for the Flames. At this point in the year, you want to make a run, you want to get into one of those wild card spots or get into the playoffs. You have to have a really successful road trip. You have to really find a way to get some wins that maybe people don't expect you to get.
I'm still in the belief that it's going to come down to I still believe that it's going to come down to the last 2 weeks of the year.
Sure.
I think it's still that close.
And for a lot of teams, it's going to be the last 2 weeks. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So just like looking at the standings here as we bring it up now, the good news is 2 things. I'm just getting over a cold. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The good news is 2 things. Number one is you're 2 games in hand on Vancouver. You're 3 games in hand on St. Louis. You're 2 games in hand on Utah. That's number one. Mm-hmm. Number 2 is that you actually own the tiebreaker with all 3 of these teams, which is a really good thing to have.
That's a huge thing.
It's massive. Yeah. So I'm curious to know, Neil, you got 4 teams fighting for one spot here. I'm I'm starting to just watching this team the last week, even against Vancouver, for me, they blew that in that third period, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've got a really bad feeling in these next 2 weeks here that we're going to see a lot of losses being piled up here.
I mean, that obviously, from any fan's perspective, you don't want to have, I understand that fear, especially when you look at examples like the way that they played against Vancouver. They quite frankly didn't deserve to win that game at all. It's really kind of a tough situation because you're you're in a bad stretch right now, and this is not the time to be going through it. But as I mentioned before, this is a really important road trip. This could be a road trip that could turn things around again and get them back, back into. I mean, again, they win tonight, they're right there.
You're right back. They beat the tiebreaker, and you're right back in a playoff
100%. But then you look at teams like Utah, who's got luckily you have 2 games in hand on Utah. You have 3 games in hand, as you mentioned, on St. Louis. Like, there is opportunity here to gain a lot of ground over the next week and a half, 2 weeks. But like you said, it will come down to the last 2 weeks of the year. You look at the last 10 for the Flames, 4-3-3. That's not. I mean, again, like, you've gotten points in 7 of those 10 games. It's great. Mm-hmm. But also, I've said it before, that right now it's about collecting points, but more importantly, it's about collecting wins, because obviously getting the 2 points is so important. So, I'm not in like the worry stage yet.
Yeah.
But if they get off to a bad start on this road trip, like let's say they lose tonight and then they lose to the Rangers, then it's like now they're starting to lose. Now they're starting to lose any sort of traction here in this race.
Yeah, there's definitely concern.
Why is Anaheim still technically in it?
I don't know.
I'd like look at that. Like, think about it, right? If Anaheim goes on like a 3-game heater, they're right there. They're literally right there.
True, they are right there. That's the stupid part about it, right?
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, I mean, it's funny when you look at the road trip, because you got 4 games in, I think, 6 nights coming up, right? You got tonight, you got tomorrow night, Thursday, and then they're in Long Island on Saturday, I think, for an afternoon game too, if I'm not mistaken, which wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
But I look at these next 4, right? I think there's opportunity tonight. We're never really good at MSG, so I don't love tomorrow night in New York. Against your Devils Thursday, like, I gotta say that there's opportunity there too, especially 100%. With guys missing cues and I mean, to look at it, like you said it, they lost 7-3 on Saturday to Pittsburgh, so I have to say there's opportunity there, right?
100%.
And then the Islanders, I like to think that we had their number earlier on in the year. There's no reason why they can't go in with no Brock Nelson there now to go in and get something done. So I think that you're right. Like, the beginning of this road trip here, this back-to-back, at least tonight and tomorrow night, you have to win one.
Yeah.
They have to win one game here. Just looking at the short term here tonight.
I prefer it to be the game against the Rangers.
Fair.
For my own selfish reasons. But
regardless, they need one.
Yes.
Need one here, right? Because then it kind of sets the motion.
Could be tonight. You get one. I'm just saying, like, you were talking about it, right? With the Devils, the same thing here with the Leafs. Like, they're struggling. This is it. You're facing them at a pretty good time in terms of them being fairly vulnerable and not playing well altogether. Like, this is a big thing where, like, I just want to see the Flames get back to what we've seen, grind this out, play good defense. If Dustin Wolf's got to make a save, I feel confident he will. And Dustin Wolf, as we've seen throughout the year, Kyle, he really does step up against these big time opponents. Like, he really does like take it to another level. So I'm sure he's going to try to be locked in and dialed in here against, you're facing Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, William Nylander, the list goes on. So yeah, I do agree. You got to get at least one. If you could find a way to get points in all 3 of these games I think that will certainly help. You can't go 0-3 at this point. Like, you don't have enough leeway to drop the next 3.
And that's where the concern sets in, right?
Right.
So, and again, like, I'm still of the mindset that like even just looking down the stretch, right? I'm going to really quickly pull up their schedule just in their last 20 games here, because even just looking at it, like it's still attainable after this road trip, right? You've got the Kraken at home on Tuesday.
Winnable.
You got Dallas. You got the Oilers in Edmonton. I don't love. And then you got Colorado to finish up March. So last 3 games of the year in March, like not ideal. But I think these next 5 here is going to say a lot about this team, right?
I agree.
And then big one to open up April is Utah. That's huge. In Utah,
especially depending on where both teams are by that time.
Yes. But here's where it gets good. Okay. Here's where I have confidence. You've got Anaheim. You've got 2 games against the Golden Knights in April. So that's not favorable, but they're at home. Who knows? You've got Anaheim twice. You've got San Jose twice. You've got Minnesota, who's frankly been falling quite a lot.
Despite having a 6-point lead, but yeah.
And they've beaten them twice this year already.
Right.
And then you finish off the year against LA. But you got 4 games there in April where you got the Ducks and the Sharks.
That's
so it's like significant.
A lot of there's a lot of winnable. I think after this stretch, you could argue that there are, some winnable games. And I think that if they can, like, again, it goes back to this road trip. Like, if they can find a way to get some points here on this road trip, especially when eventually they go up against Dallas and Edmonton,
yes.
I think that I believe that there is a path. There is a direct path that this Flames team could string together a couple of good performances and get into a more concrete playoff position.
And I mean, last 2 games of the year, I know it's too far in advance, but Golden Knights and Kings, they might have their position locked in. They might have nothing to play for.
Yep.
So that's something to keep noting,
sure.
Right? And I think that April, there's a lot of room to, like, even Utah where they're at, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I still think there's, a lot of room in April. I just think with March here, just looking at it, I don't like their last 3 games. Dallas, Oilers, Avalanche, not fantastic. But I think these next 5 I'm looking at here with the Leafs, the Rangers, Devils, Islanders, and Kraken, like, even as decimated as they are, I think there's a path, like you mentioned.
There is a path. And I think that's kind of the beauty of this whole thing is, like, any team can get going at any time. And I think that the Flames have been capable in the past of stringing together a couple of good performances in a row and getting on somewhat of a roll. And I think that there is the opportunity to do that.
And frankly, all it's going to take is goal scoring. That's it.
And that, I would really like to see, and I don't want to think too far ahead, but I would really like to see how Craig Conroy goes into the offseason, especially if the goal scoring continues to be an issue, because I wonder then what direction he might want to take in terms of how can I improve that? Is it through the draft? Is it through what we have on, in our system? Is it a trade? Is it free agency? Like, I would really be interested to see how that goes. But yeah, I mean, goal scoring has been a question mark throughout the year. There's been times where it was great. There have been times where it's not.
Yeah.
I would like to think that with the way the Leafs have been playing recently and the struggles that the Flames have had of late in terms of scoring, that this could be a really good game to get the scoring going a bit more.
Back up. I don't think it's out of the question that Zane Parekh gets, like, he's the only defenseman in the last 30 years in the OHL who has, I can't remember how many points it is. He's playing out of his mind. That might be the steal of the draft. And that's how we're voting it. And I'm not just saying that just to be biased here. Like, that actually
right.
is a steal.
I got you.
So, and you're right. Like, it is curious to see, like, regardless of what happens here, these last 20 games, I think it's very clear that you've got your goalie of the future, right? Who could one day win a Vezina. That's how good he is, right? It's possible.
He might win Rookie of the Year this year. I mean, he gives himself a shot.
I don't get why he's not more higher up in the conversation. Yeah. But, like, you've got goaltending what you need for the next 8 years, right? Because I assume they're going to lock him up for 8 years. Probably. And I think Craig Conroy truly believes that there is a foundation where if you can just go out and buy goals in the offseason, right? It might not be this year in free agency, but especially when you're looking at the draft, right? Thanks for the draft pick. Like you're gonna go out and more or less look for guys who can score, right?
Right.
The other thing too is like Mateo Green and Henry Muse, both guys are committing to college next year, which is going to help, right? Because of their offensive proportions. And again, this is a lot of stuff looking forward, but you have to be like, I like to look at it as I'm kind of hopeful moving forward because you've got your goaltender locked up and you are okay to move on from Rasmus. And you're really just kind of looking at it like, hey, we can really have a good defense here and just shore up the offense where if we can go out and buy some goals here, we're going to be right in the mix. And all it's going to take is one really hot streak there in the playoffs and different things can happen.
Yeah.
So
like we keep saying, Kyle, there's a path. There is a path. There's a path for everything. And it'll be really, like I said, it'll be really interesting to see how Craig Conrad goes about the offseason once we get to that point, whenever that might be, in terms of what's the next step for this team in terms of building.
I think that because they have to, right? It is a retool, but I think they have to because they can't afford to go into a rebuild. Not with now all of a sudden Dustin Wolf completely changed it completely.
Yeah.
Right. And even some of the younger kids coming up and the draft class that they had, like you've done it. Now you've got to embrace it. So I don't think it's going to take much to be back. And I'd like to think that next year they can be in the conversation again, which is why I'm okay if they don't make it this year. Because it's already been a success.
Right. No, this has been a year that's been way better than any of us thought, and certainly any of the prognosticators thought. I mean, it's just, I think I even saw from the Score, they were doing their recent power rankings. I think it was early this morning. And
I saw that came out.
The one surprise for the Flames is that they're still in it. And I think that's the way that everybody looks at it, is like, they're still there. They're still very much in the thick of it. If they go on a 3 or 4 game heater, let's say, not only are they back in a playoff spot the way that I see it, but they might build somewhat of a cushion, and then all of a sudden that changes a lot. So,
and to go off of it, each team's biggest surprise was the headline for the Score. And I like to do their power rankings because it's fairly accurate, and I like it.
They're also way more simple than any other power ranking I've read.
You got it. So they have them 17th, one below Vancouver, and you're right, it says they're still in it. The Flames were anticipated to sell the season and be in the mix for the top pick. Despite being last in goals per game, no surprise there, Calgary remains in playoff contention thanks in large part to Dustin Wolf's heroics between the pipes. That's exactly their season. And if you're kind of sitting there going like, okay, like all we have to do realistically is go out and buy some goals, And a lot of people, and maybe there's some backfire, I guess, for Flames fans, because then it's like, oh, well, then you needed to tank to get a top pick, right? Sometimes, we've seen it before, man. Like, Nail Yakupov, we know that story, right? How he was the number 1 overall pick, and it went to shit. And there's been a couple of times where you just look at it and, you're not always going to hit when you get a top pick. And that's sometimes the risk that you run.
There's so many times that you can point out where a guy exactly. in the lower rounds that ended up working out. Again, not to toot my own horn, but you look at a guy like, Jesper Bratt has been nothing but fantastic, especially since Jack Hughes been out. He broke the Devils single season record for assists, and he's top 6 in assists. This dude
where was he drafted?
He was drafted in the 6th round. So that what I would tell Flames fans and what I would tell fans in general is that it is not a guarantee, especially in the draft lottery, not guarantee you're going to get the first pick if you're the worst team. You have a higher chance for sure.
Yeah.
Not a guarantee. The other thing is that you're not guaranteed to have an amazing guy at pick number 1. You might find a guy with that 3rd first-round pick that the Flames have that you didn't expect. That, you hear about him, oh, he's pretty good. And then you're like, ho-hum. And then, in 2 or 3 years, you're like, where did he come from? And then you realize, oh, remember that pick that we got from Montreal? Or remember that pick that we got from New Jersey? That's why that's how we got this guy in the first place. And then you're like, wow. Or he could be a 5th rounder and then just really come out of left field.
Exactly. So. And even just talking about the draft, let's take a look real quick. Overall, I want to show you how close it really is, right? And you know this too. So there's Calgary sitting there 18th, right? So bottom 10 is between, where is it? San Jose,
Who
2, 3, 4,
who
5,
who
6, 7.
actually has officially been eliminated from.
And they've been eliminated from the playoff contention. So it's all the way down to the Islanders, where they're 10th. We're talking 3 points between like 9th and where the Flames are, right? We're talking 5 points between where the Penguins are and the Ducks, who are 6 points. And it's like
So much.
it's a lot of leeway here, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's going to be very, 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 very fascinating to see what happens. I again lean
So much going on.
towards. I mean, look where Montreal is right now, right? Because you're going to give it up, and then obviously we're going to see what happens with the Devils coming up, because I think that's the one that's obviously most intriguing in terms of their first round picks.
Mhm.
I just want to see them still be in the fight. Don't give them their pick next year. Just give it to them now. So, been to that one too much.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough.
To that one way too much. Okay, we'll look at the Eastern Conference real quick afterwards, but let's take a quick break. I got some other news afterwards as well. We'll do a quick ad read, and we'll talk about the Eastern Conference standings. We'll talk about one big thing that came up at the deadline that's kind of resurfacing again. I'll explain more of that afterwards. But
I think I have a good idea where this might be going, but
we'll see how it goes.
We'll see.
All right, let's get into it, and we'll be back. The NHL season has been as predictable as a puck rolling on its edge. No one knows where it's going, but that just means there's time for your favorite team to figure things out and games left for you to get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. It's super easy for first-timers to get started. You can try betting on something simple like picking a team to win. You can go to DraftKings Sportsbook app, select your team, and place your first bet. If you're new to DraftKings, listen up. New customers bet $5 and you can get $150 in bonus bets instantly. You can download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $150. Wow.
Sorry about that.
In bonus bets instantly. That's okay. When you bet,
Oh, that was awesome.
only on DraftKings, the crown is yours. If you got a gambling problem, you call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly, and on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. New customers only, and bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms of responsible gambling, see dkng.com/audio. NHL and the NHL Shield are registered trademarks in the NHL League, and the NHL team marks are the property of the NHL and teams of 2025. All rights reserved. Okay.
I hate Instagram.
That was funny. That's okay.
I actually hate. No, because the thing about it is that like they sneak like the audio button where like if you lightly tap the damn post, it'll just come out. Yeah. And then there's times where like we all forget like, oh, where's our volume at? And then it's like you freak yourself out, and then with the mic literally right here. I apologize for that.
Oh, it's all good.
I actually have some on this day kind of news, which is not news, but like an on this day type of thing, because it is St. Patrick's Day. So 16 years ago today, so this is March 16th, 2009, Martin Brodeur broke Patrick Waugh's record for the most wins in NHL history to become the winningest netminder ever, which he still is to this day. And on that same day and that same game against the Chicago Blackhawks, Patrick Elias, who I would like to hope eventually does get in the Hall of Fame, broke the Devils' all-time record for most points in a career. So, and I was ice level for that entire game. And I'm not putting up the picture because I am embarrassed.
And a little youngling at the time, too.
Little youngling, yep.
All right, let's have fun. Let's have some fun here. Look at the East.
Christ.
So, looked at the West. Let's take a look here at the East. Now you got Florida kind of, sort of, maybe trying to secure the number one spot.
By the way, bad loss for them last night.
Yeah,
a multi-goal lead in the third to the Islanders, ended up losing the game.
And they also lost to, who was that? Montreal on Saturday as well. Big win for Montreal as well.
struggling a little bit of late. So
Washington has essentially locked down, in my mind, 10 points up on the Hurricanes. They've kind of locked down the number one spot in the East.
President's Trophy, here they come.
Here they come. So that's kind of where I see it there. Carolina and New Jersey, I like to think that that's kind of what we're going to see going forward.
Yeah.
That's just me.
I mean, it's been that way for the past 2 months. The funny thing is that they haven't changed.
I don't see it changing.
I think more of the question for a lot of people with regards to that is who's going to end up with the home ice advantage. I think it's going to end up likely being Carolina.
I think so.
But, it doesn't surprise me that both of those teams will play each other in the first round. It'll be interesting, but
lots of time still.
Lots of time left. Oh, yeah.
And also, too, I mean, the Rangers are slowly but surely, who knows, like 6 points might not be a big difference because all it's going to take is 2 wins and 2 losses, and all of a sudden, boom, we got a race for the third spot. So the team that's intrigued me the most is Ottawa. They are 7-2-1 in their last 10 games. They are on a 6-game winning streak right now. And if it ended today, it'd be the Tkachuk brothers going at it in the first round.
Damn.
I would like
that.
Here's what I think is going to happen.
Shoot.
Okay?
Shoot.
I think the Senators are going to leapfrog the Leafs in the Atlantic. I think they're going to leapfrog them.
Look, if the Flames win tonight, that certainly helps the Senators' case, does it not?
Well, no kidding, right?
No, obviously.
I like to think, and you know what? I think they will. I think they're going to fall hard.
I think we need to clip this. I think this needs to be clipped, and then we'll see how it goes down the stretch.
The Leafs are going to fall hard, and I think the Senators will.
Wouldn't that be something if they fell hard enough to where they're in a tight wild card race?
I don't think it's going to be that hard.
Okay.
I can't see it being that hard.
But in the wild card spot.
Yeah. It wouldn't surprise me because they've lost 5 of their last 6.
Maybe the Leafs are doing it on purpose because they don't want to play Tampa yet again in the first round.
Well, guess what? You might not. I mean, it's not going to be much better if you get a healthy Florida team where Tkachuk and Marshall all come back.
Yeah, it's
they're going to have a better but the stupid thing is this, right? For the Leafs, you're going to have to go through Florida. At some point,
100%.
You're going to have to go through them, right? Unless Ottawa, if they get matched up and all of a sudden, boom, they play each other in round 1 and Ottawa wins, at some point, Florida's going to have to match up with Toronto, I think, in the playoffs. I just see it, right? And I don't think that they're not even on the same stratosphere. I don't think so.
It's not great.
It's not great. And then I think the most interesting part about all of this is going to be for that last wildcard spot because you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams 4 points of each other.
Where do you do the cutoff in terms of this team's not making it or not going to have a chance? Do you think it's where Pittsburgh is? Do you think it's where Philadelphia is, or do you think it's where the Sabres are?
Who doesn't get in?
Yeah, who has because we talk about how tight the race is. You look at the points and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But the question I have is where does the cutoff begin of teams it's very, very unlikely that they make the playoffs. I think it's where the Sabres are because I think the Flyers. I mean, they're still there.
Really?
But
I think it's higher than that.
Where you going, Boston?
I have all the way up to the Islanders.
Really?
Yeah,
so you're saying? I mean, I can see where you're coming from with that. I can. One thing I will just mention that I don't know if you saw: Islanders have 2 games in hand on the Rangers and 1 game in hand on Detroit. Just something to keep it. But they suck at scoring. As bad as now. Look, I understand that Flames, on average, not the worst. The worst team in terms of scoring.
They are.
The Islanders are just as bad.
Yes,
with more talent, I would argue.
And they lost Brock Nelson. So that to me is that's going to be the fall off, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Everybody else above that, I think, has a fair shot.
I'm worried about Columbus because they have, I think they said like the fourth or fifth hardest schedule the rest of the way. They're coming off of back-to-back 4-0 losses. I understand that obviously tonight could be a really good opportunity against the Devils to shake off this losing streak and get back into the swing of things with the
Get going.
Walker race, but like they're slowly falling here.
I agree. I think, I don't see
But that 2 games in hand is really important for them.
The Red Wings being 3-7 in their last 10, they went on a big losing streak too. Don't forget.
Yeah, if you look at the last 10, like the only team that has stepped up other than Ottawa is Montreal, which is scary to think about.
7-1-2 in their last 10 games. They've been on a heater. And even the Rangers, like they've been 500, but they're in a playoff spot. So
that's how tight the race has been. Yeah.
Who do you think takes it last wildcard spot? I look at 14. I look at Detroit, Columbus, Montreal, and the Rangers to get in.
I'm gonna go with Montreal on this one. The thing about it is that if we're looking at if we're gonna go off of your cutoff, right? So you're looking at the Rangers, Canadians, Blue Jackets, and Wings. Rangers way too inconsistent.
Mm-hmm.
Way too inconsistent. They be losing games. Like I don't think they should have lost last night, but they did. They dropped points and it's significant. Canadians been playing really well. Big question for me, goaltending. But I will say Montembeault has been better of late, so we'll give him that. Blue Jackets really bad with goaltending,
right?
To the point now where Merzlikins has been dropped to the third goaltender on the depth chart. Like they're not.
Yeah.
And then you have the Islanders, who they do have goaltending with Ilya Sorokin, and when Sorokin's on his game, as we've seen in the past, Kyle, he's been, they can really go, but their goal scoring is not there. I think it's going to end up being a battle between Detroit and Montreal down the stretch.
Really? You don't think the Rangers are going to be in it?
I think the Rangers are going to lose a couple of games down the stretch here that they really shouldn't because they're way too inconsistent. I could be wrong. I know you look at them on paper, Kyle, but think about this, right?
Okay.
Think about this. Panarin hasn't been scoring. Kreider hasn't been scoring. JT Miller hasn't been scoring. Like their top guys are not Zibanejad. Like they're not doing a whole lot right now.
I'd like to think their schedule is a little favorable though. Like you got the Ducks, the Sharks coming up. They got to play the Canucks. They got Calgary Tuesday night, obviously.
Yeah.
Philadelphia, the Islanders on their schedule. Like I don't see a world in which the Rangers miss. And the reason why I'll say that, I think maybe because look at the goal differential here. You got 19 goals in difference. And even though they are a bit inconsistent,
their differential's at 500. They're exactly.
We're at the point now. We've hit the mark in the season where every single game matters for these teams trying to get in.
100%.
Right. And I think that it's going to get a little bit tighter. And for Montreal, they don't play the Rangers coming up at all, which I find fascinating.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And just looking at, I want to look at Montreal's schedule coming up too. Like they've got Ottawa tomorrow night, which is a huge game, right? And
which team has Ottawa?
Montreal.
Montreal.
Ottawa,
okay.
Right? I don't love Montreal's schedule coming up, but give them credit because they've been playing really well. Because after Ottawa and the Islanders, they got the Avalanche, St. Louis, and Philly, right? But then you got Hurricanes, Panthers back to back, and a big game against Boston at home.
Mm-hmm. It's tough.
So it's gonna be tough.
It's tough, but obviously them playing well of late is going to give them confidence. And
for sure.
Yeah, no, it's. I know people say bias because being a Devils fan, but I've watched enough of the Rangers this year that they've lost more than a handful of games this year where they just looked terrible. They looked unstable. That's the thing that concerns me. It's not the strength of schedule to me per se. It's the fact that they have not shown that they can string together 3, 4, 5 wins and go and lock this down. So that's why it's opening up. I will backtrack and I will say that I'll include the Rangers in that race to the end just because of who they are. I'm just worried about Columbus in the sense of, have they started to lose steam? Are they, because they're not scoring right now either.
Right.
So it's are they is the I don't want to say magic, but is the juju, is the good wit, is the good feeling, is it starting to, are we starting to get more of the reality of what people think the Blue Jackets are?
I can
This
see that.
could change tonight.
Good.
Very big game tonight, so it could change.
I can see that with Columbus, though. I can absolutely see
But
that.
I want to see. I would rather, out of being honest with you, out of those teams still fighting for it, the Blue Jackets would be the one I would like to see make the playoffs.
Sure. If you're Washington, you don't want to see the Rangers. That's the team that's going to scare them the most, I think. Wouldn't you say?
Out of the teams remaining,
like
probably just on talent alone, and like you're facing Shesterkin. And look, the one thing that we've seen in years past, Kyle, is that when look at the Capitals, right? They've won the second most President's Trophies since it existed, and a bunch of them have been in the last 15 years.
Right.
And every time they've won it, they've fallen out in the first round at the very least. So yeah, like that would be a very interesting 1-8 seed, because that would be a battle of last year where it was the other way around, where it was Washington was the 8th seed and going from there. Big question for me in terms of the Washington Capitals is still this. And I know people don't like to hear about analytics, but analytically speaking, they should not be this good. By any means, they should not be this good.
Sure.
They are getting career years from everyone other than Ovechkin, because Ovechkin is just that good. And he'll probably break the record by early April at this point, the way he's been playing.
I agree.
I don't know, man. Playoffs are a clean slate.
That's the problem. Like, it's a clean slate, and I'm Washington. I hope the Rangers don't get in, because I wouldn't want to see the Rangers. That's the team that scares them the most. I think they handle their business against Montreal, Columbus, and Detroit.
I agree.
They would handle their business. I think it'll be a tough out if they play New York.
It's true. It's really true.
A lot of fascinating matchups.
I will say, though, that if it wasn't for Tristan Jarry, of all people, the Penguins would be a lot further down in the standings right now. They've won 4 in a row. And yeah, they're still a decent amount of games, a decent amount of points behind. But, like, wouldn't that be something if they came out of nowhere and they ended up as the 8th seed? So you get one last Crosby-Ovechkin playoff series?
There's headlines everywhere, man. Like, that's the thing.
Yeah. Except Buffalo, there's no headlines
for sure. But like with Buffalo, exactly. But just there's headlines everywhere. If it's Washington Rangers in round 1, if you get the Tkachuk brothers facing off in round 1, you got another matchup with Tampa Bay and Toronto. You got Carolina and New Jersey going at it again. Out west, Dallas, Colorado for me is like set.
Oh, I think it's going to happen. I think it's going to happen at this point.
It looks like a collision course, right?
Oh yeah.
You got that. You got.
Oh God, we could get Edmonton and LA for what, the 3rd year in a row?
It's very possible, right? Vegas gets Minnesota, like that could be interesting, and then like it could be an all Canadian matchup depending on if it's like Vancouver or Calgary getting in, or who knows, or Utah getting in, for God's sakes.
Yeah, for sure.
These first round matchups are going to be wild.
Yeah, I think we're in for. I think it's great because we're in for a really good stretch here over the next 2 weeks, with all these teams fighting for the very few playoff spots that are not locked up.
Yeah.
And then I think that we're really in for good matchups regardless of how this all plays out.
I think so too.
I think we're in for, and like we talked about it when we talk about the 4 Nations, that it really helped grow the popularity of the sport. I think now with a lot of new people watching and being into it, and everybody's been telling those people, like, wait till you get to the playoffs, and we might get really good matchups.
That's
much
phenomenal. That's why I want Tkachuk on Tkachuk. I want Washington and the Rangers, right? Like, I always find that matchup fascinating in the playoffs.
Yes, you should.
Right? And just a lot of headlines. And then Dallas, Colorado is going to blow the fucking roof off the place. Yep. Like that smells 7-game series right there.
Yeah, for sure.
Sure. Last bit of news that I have today, NHL news wise, is I saw it pop up on the score, and I figured I'd share it too, is I guess that Carolina is going to go after Mitch Marner in the offseason if he doesn't extend.
Oh, give me a break. Give me a break.
That's what I'm reading here. So
no, I believe you.
From Pierre LeBrun, too.
I mean, I believe it.
So what do you hate about it?
What I hate about it is I don't hate it. No, it's not that I hate it.
Okay.
Here's my attitude towards it. We talked about it, right? With after the Rantanen trade. The Hurricanes in the last 2 years have let top end players leave, whether
Right.
via being traded or free agency. Marner didn't want to waive his no trade clause at the trade deadline, and I understand it. He's in a better position with Toronto than he would be if he had gone to Carolina. I would just argue that.
Sure.
I don't see a world where the interest would be there for Marner. But again, if he's going to end up going to the highest bidder, I would argue to say that there are lesser teams, i.e., like Chicago, somebody like that, that would offer him more. But if it's not a money thing per se, right? If he's like, I want to stay in Toronto, then they're going to figure it out. There will be what I would like to call a happy medium where they will come together. That's the thing. I heard from Mike Rupp on NHL Network talking about, there is like players do want to play in Carolina. But like, where is that coming from? Because it just seems like to me, as we talked about a bunch during our trade deadline special, there's something wrong there that makes it not as desirable. Maybe it is Rob Brindamore. Maybe it's the owners. I would lean more towards its ownership in the front office than it is the coach itself. But I mean, shoot, look at all the stuff that has come out over the last week and change from the Hurricanes, from Rantanen, about what really went down over those last couple of weeks. I mean, you trade for Rantanen, and supposedly Rantanen said right from the get-go that he was not going to re-sign. I don't know if that's true or not. And then Rob Brindamore goes on that radio show.
That's right. That Bailey drop, by the way.
Yeah, shout out to Bailey, by the way, for dropping the absolute bomb. I mean, she dropped the bombshell on the NHL world that, like, he just straight up just didn't want to be on this team.
Yeah.
So what? So it's not a knock per se on the Hurricanes, but it's a question of how will you convince a top flight player who you've had trouble convincing top flight players to stay long term. How are you going to, other than money, convince Mitch Marner to stay to sign long term? Yeah. That's why I was reacting that way, because I'm like, there's no evidence to back up that top flight players want to stay in Carolina. And what I mean by top flight is I'm not looking at the guys that are already on Carolina, because there are some really talented guys on there. Svechnikov, Aho, Jarvis, all of these guys, right? But they haven't been able to secure someone outside of the organization long term. And I think that's the big thing to look at when we hit free agency.
It's going to be interesting to see what they do at free agency, for sure.
But I think where there's smoke, there's fire. So I don't.
Yeah, I believe that.
When Pierre LeBrun is saying that, this is not like, this is like, okay, the Hurricanes are definitely going to pursue a top flight free agent. Okay, so are a lot of teams. So, yeah.
You got 31 other teams interested.
People have told me that the Devils will pursue Mitch Marner. Okay. Doesn't mean he's going to get him. Yeah. It just means that they're going to try to see if they can get it done. And if they don't, they don't. The same thing with Carolina, same thing with Toronto. I would say that I am 75% sure that Mitch Marner stays in Toronto long term.
Me too. I can't, unless they completely lowball him. Then
which they could.
It's possible.
They tried to do that with William Nylander. Now, granted, that was the Dubas-led Leafs, so this is different.
Right.
But maybe it's not.
But here's the other thing, too, and I think it certainly probably changed his perception come free agency, right? I think before the news broke that he was asked to move his no move, right, with the Rantanen deal, right? Before that, if none of that came out, I'm fully convinced that he probably ends up finding a way to re-sign there, right?
Yeah.
Now that happens, they approached you, right?
They told you, we want to
They-
trade you away from this team to get someone that we think is better than you. That is the emotional thinking process that whatever player in this position is thinking. That the organization would rather trade you away because if that's how they're looking at it, then what we're essentially saying is that they may not feel that Mitch Marner is going to stay. Now you do this, you're making it that much easier for him to have a reason to not want to come back.
I think it's kind of stretching at me. I was thinking, yeah, 75% is probably about right. I think it's lower than that now. I don't know.
Maybe 50?
Maybe.
We going down to 50 at this point?
Maybe. I think so because, he's got to think like, well, if that's my worth, like if that's my value to you guys, why am I here?
Why are we here? And he's been out of all the main guys in Toronto.
Yeah.
He has been probably in many ways the most scrutinized of them all.
Oh,
over
absolutely.
The years.
Yeah,
because we've seen Austin Matthews. Everybody knows what his value is. We made that clear. William Nylander has also shown. With Mitch Marner, I mean, it's really fascinating with him because I think he's a top flight player for sure. He does have to step up in the playoffs. I will say that. And
it's funny because he did last year.
It didn't matter. That's the worst part.
And it didn't matter at all because of Game 7 in Boston, right? So, but in years prior, yes, he has had.
And
right?
think about all the stories that have come out about him over the years, like all the crap that came out between him and Mike Babcock a couple years ago.
Yeah,
not knocking on him per se, but
it's an interesting conversation though because, I think if you take him out of Toronto and you stick him somewhere, I don't know, you stick him in Utah, for example.
Yes,
that's a great piece for that team. And
you have a marketable player at that point. All of a sudden, you have a marketable superstar player for a team that is just becoming relevant in your city. Of like, hey, this is the poster child. And
right?
He might be like, I finally get to go somewhere where I'm valued at the way that I want to be valued.
Yeah, and I think also too, it speaks to the volume of when we look at superstars in the league, right? Some people can take it under the brightest of lights in the biggest of cities, right? In LA, in Boston, in Toronto, in Chicago, the biggest places, right? Some superstars can take it. Some others can't. And they have to go somewhere that's a little less marketable. Yeah. Take Florida, for example, right? Take Florida as a massive example where not only it's desirable to be location-wise, but hockey's not clearly at the top of the market there because of the dollar, and state income tax and all that.
Thank you. I was going to say, it's important for some guys that they get as much of the money that they're going to get paid as possible.
Yeah. And in Dallas too, right?
Why do you think one of the reasons that players want to go to Vegas is partially because of that reason. Whether they want to admit it or not, there is no state income tax.
Oh yeah, for sure. They want their bag, right? That's at the end of the day, they know if they might hit that point in their career though where it's like, man, I haven't won a Stanley Cup yet. I want to go to a contender, and that's where things happen at the deadline. But for Marner, I look at him I'm kind of sitting there going, if it doesn't go well for you guys in the playoffs this year, which is what I'm assuming, right?
It's hard not to assume it.
It's hard. So I then wonder, and I would ask him and go, what do you value more now in your career?
Yeah, right? Money.
You have not had the success that you want, despite it being in Toronto. You haven't had that success that you would like to see in the playoffs. And what are you going to value more, right? Are you going to and that was the thing. I want to take a quote from Josh Allen in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
He could have took more money, but he didn't. He's like, what's $5 more million going to do? Nothing.
He's already set for life. He's fine.
And that different story, and I get it. Maybe, but for superstar players, that is the question. Why do you think Crosby had all of the success in his prime during the stretch between 2009 all the way to 2018, I think it was.
Yeah.
He's never taken more than 8 million. 8.7.
Yeah.
Right?
Look at here's another good example. Look at the second dynasty that the New England Patriots had.
Yeah.
Right? Tom Brady constantly was taking like literally nothing
Nothing to be with this team.
because he always wanted the team to have financial flexibility to go
Correct.
out and get top flight players, this, that, and the other thing. It was only until he went to Tampa that he actually ended up getting paid, so to speak. But like, I get it. There are guys in the league, in the NHL, that know that they'll never have a higher value than they have now.
Sure.
And they look at it like, I want to secure my bag, this, that, and the other thing. And I get it. I totally get it. But if Mitch Marner's mindset is, I want to win, you have one of two options at that point. You either have to find the happy medium with Toronto, if you think that Toronto can still do it, or you will have to go to a contender and most likely, slice off a couple millions of dollars. And the thing is that with the salary cap going up, and I keep saying supposedly because I have to see it. I have to actually see it be risen, which it sounds like it's going to be.
Right.
You may have to take some of that salary off, and if Marner's cool with that, that will tell you right there all you need to know about
That's what I mean. Like, what's the difference for like? Do you value him more than Rantanen? Like, because Rantanen's 14. What was it? 14? Or no, 12.
12. No, 12. He wanted 14.
He wanted 14, but he got.
But he ended up getting 12 and a half.
I think it was like 12. Yeah, 12 and a half or something.
12 and a half. I thought it was close to 13. I think it was 12 and a half. Do I value Rantanen more than I value Mitch Marner? That was your question? That's a really good question because I consider them similar in a way, but also because it's similar in this regard, Kyle. The knock on Rantanen at this point has been that he is a quote unquote Nathan McKinnon merchant. That's
like in the shadow, like he was in the shadow.
He was in his shadow. I think a lot of people think that way at times about Mitch Marner.
All the time.
And so that's this biggest similarity. My thing is that I think that Marner's value is a little bit less than Rantanen. So I would say 10 and a half, 11 for him. Honestly. So which I think in this world, with the salary cap going up, that might actually be somewhat of a steal for whatever team he goes to.
I think it would be. I think it's but
like if Utah gets him for $10 million, right, a year, I think that's a win in my book.
And especially with the salary cap going up, right? Like,
I will give you one wild card team, Kyle. One wild card team that could jump in on the Mitch Marner sweepstakes that no one has mentioned.
Okay.
The Seattle Kraken. And I say that because the Kraken, think about this. Ron Francis, right now, I think I would argue is on the hot seat because of they went from 2 years ago, and what was it? 2 years ago they went to the
2 years ago they were in
second round. Yeah. And last year they missed, and this year they're most likely going to miss again.
They're missing again, yeah.
Yeah. So they need a top flight player, in my opinion. Right. I believe that they do because I don't think they have it. I don't believe that they have it. And I think that that's a team that could, and I'm saying could. I'm not saying, I'm not saying it's definitely going to happen. I'm just saying that's a team that I've always found interesting in terms of free agency.
You know who would not surprise me at all if they went after him in free agency?
Mm-hmm.
I don't.
That would solve a lot of the goal scoring problem, wouldn't it?
I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility.
Well, I think we talked about it. I think we've talked about it.
I really don't think that. I think the Flames could absolutely be it. Do I think they get them at the end of the day? No, I don't think so. But I think they'll be in the conversation because they have a
lot of.
My thing is last thing.
He stays in Canada, but he goes to. I don't want to say I don't want to say it like this is a lesser fan base. I'm just saying maybe the pressure would be different.
Pressure would be different for sure because I think
that Flames fans would be more.
The culture would be different.
Yeah, the culture would be
different.
The
big thing is that you're the guy.
You're automatically the main
cog of the guy.
Yeah.
Right? And no matter where you go, you're not going to be under Matthews. And frankly, he's been under Nylander's shadow too a little bit. right? So I don't think it's crazy because
It's not.
listen, the most important thing for them to do this offseason is obviously sign Dustin Wolf and their young guys and blah, 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 right? So you have to kind of see like that. I think the way the money's going to work out is I think there's still not going to be enough for them to make something like this move.
Mhm.
But, you know, they're going to have around $28 million in cap space, around that, give or take, right? You sign Dustin Wolf, let's say, to an 8x8, 10. Let's say $10 million just to be
okay.
You got 18 million left over. Okay, you got to sign Zari, you got to sign Coronado. You'll probably have about close to $10 million left in cap. And this might even be like they could make a move to try to sign him. I really believe that they could. I think they should.
Why not?
The only problem.
So let's be fair. Nikolai Ehlers is also a free agent.
I would actually go after Ehlers more than I would Marner.
A lot more people, because I spoke about it with a lot of Devils fans when we talk about like free agency. A lot of people have said Marner's going to kill, contract-wise, kill like a lot of teams' financial flexibility. But like Nikolai Ehlers is a guy that can score at a pretty good pace. That would probably be around $8 million per year, maybe 8.5.
And I've said it before, as good as Huberdeau has been this year in terms of goals and assists, he's been 25 and 24 for goals and assists. He's a guy that is a playmaker. He's not a goal scorer. So you need somebody to match that with, right?
Yeah. And that's what he did. That's what he did when he was in Florida. It was.
I would throw the bag at Ehlers. I would throw it at Ehlers. He's a young guy too, if I'm not mistaken.
Ehlers is in his prime. Yep, Ehlers is in his prime. And if Winnipeg doesn't get it done, which is hard for me to believe because they keep disappointing everybody.
I don't think they have enough.
Yeah, I don't think they have enough.
No.
What financially? Wait, are you talking about financially or just enough?
Sorry, I'm thinking enough just for now, like to win.
Oh, well, the big question for them is going to be Connor Hellebuck in the playoffs.
Sure. And they trusted their core enough to be like, we don't need to make a move at the deadline.
Because this was supposed to be a year. I think people thought that like it wasn't that long ago, was it? Like 2 years ago that like the Jets were considering trading Hellebuck.
Correct. Yeah.
And kind of starting over almost.
Yes. Yeah. So, I think you're right. Yeah. I don't think they have enough to get by Dallas or Colorado coming up. It'll be interesting.
It's gonna be interesting. I think what's great is that there's just more. I don't know what it is. There just seems to be more excitement and more exciting things to talk about. And again, I just hope we're not disappointed. Like I felt like the trade deadline, other than the Rantanen deal, was as usual kind of a.
Well, look what happened to Marchand, right? Like,
oh yeah, big time. Well, did you see? This is the last thing I'll say. Did you see that clip from the Bruins behind the B thing where Sweeney just comes walking in and he just says like, "Oh yeah, Panthers traded for March for
a second conditional."
Silence.
You heard somebody in the background though just say, "Jesus."
Yeah, Jesus. Because that front office knows that they fucked up. He doesn't re-sign in Boston. I don't see it.
I don't see it either.
How could he go back there?
You burned the bridge.
He didn't do it. Marchand, from what we understand, from what he said, it doesn't sound like he did anything wrong in this situation.
No.
It sounded like he was, okay, I can come back and be reasonable. We can find a common ground and go from there. Nope. And so, Kyle, that's why I have a hot take that.
I know what you're going to say.
What? What do you think I'm going to say?
With Pasternak.
He might be available.
I think he absolutely could.
I think he could be available, and he's under contract, which makes him way more enticing to teams than necessarily free agency. Because if you're getting Pasternak, first of all, you know what you're paying him.
Sure.
And number two, for contending teams, dude, this is one of the top 5 best goal scorers in the world right now. It is
plus, like their prospect pool is dog water.
It's awful. Right? It might be the worst in the NHL.
So you can turn that around instantly.
Like, 100%.
Why not, man?
100%.
Oh my God. It's gonna be an interesting offseason coming up.
And I think that that's definitely going to be a question because what is the overall like? Think about when they beat the Penguins like a week and change ago, like the weekend before the deadline.
Yes.
And Pasternak said to Emily Kaplan, like, "Oh, we're right in the thick of things. Like, we just got to, get together a couple wins."
And they still are.
They still are, but then you go and do that.
Yeah.
Like, you go and do that, and like, other than Pasternak, who is stepping up for Boston right now?
And
now that
you're locked in with Lindholm and Zadorov. So it's a
and
mess.
Swayman now, who
and he's
not the best.
No, he hasn't.
And your backup is Jonas Corposalo.
Yeah,
I wonder if Bruins fans feel like it's time to rebuild.
Oh, you gotta demolish it, man. At this point,
and
you just did that, you gotta.
And that's why I'm saying, if you trade a guy like Pasternak now in his prime,
do it right
you're gonna get a good deal from somebody. Yeah, and if you don't, that Sweeney should be fired. I mean, I think Sweeney should have been fired 2 years ago, but he somehow stays around because
he should be fired after this season. It's a joke. Anything else news-wise? Congrats winning players. Yeah.
I have some really cool. So last night, the PWHL had another takeover game where they essentially went to a city that doesn't have a team in a big arena. Last night, the New York Sirens played the Minnesota Frost in Detroit at the Little Caesars Arena. Over 18,000 fans showed up for that one, which is the most of any of the PWHL takeover games this year. Sirens ended up winning 4-1 in that one, but at the end of the game, there was a very loud, distinct chant of "We want a team." I am a firm believer that Detroit ends up being the next city that gets a professional women's hockey team because I think that is a place that you could really, really get a lot of people to show up. So
I just
want to shout out the PWHL for just the slow and proper development of this league. Last year, I thought that they did a pretty solid job. The jerseys were okay, but people wanted team names. This year,
I was just gonna say, it's fantastic, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want your thought real quick on this before we go. Mm-hmm. Body checking should be a part of this league, should it not?
It should 100% be.
The fact that it isn't, because I remember seeing I had it on the TV about a week or two ago, and I don't know who it was, but one of the girls body checked the other, and then penalty, go in the box, and I'm like, but they can fight.
They can fight, but they can't hit each other, and it's so weird.
What are we doing here, man?
Yeah, I don't really know what the thinking behind that is, because what you're essentially doing,
you're minimizing.
You're minimizing. You are discrediting women in a way by doing that, because you're essentially making that league lesser and making it just in general lesser than what it should be. By not
I don't get it.
Want to see the people that are casuals of hockey. Yeah. What do they want to see? They want to see a fucking fight. They want to see, body checking. They want to see
I'm all for them wearing cages, though. Don't forget.
Oh, I don't. I don't care about that.
I don't have a problem because it's a safety issue too, right? And I fully believe the men should be doing that as well.
The men 100%.
They should.
I agree.
My God, save your teeth.
I'd love to see some of these guys rocking the cage.
Yeah. I don't get why
it's like Mitch Marner back in his junior days, just rocking the cage.
I don't get why but I understand at the same time, at the end of the day, it should be up to them, right? And same thing for women too. If you want to do it, by all means, right?
It should be. So, it's a lot of. I was saying before, I think I just give the PWHL a lot of credit that they have done it to this point, and I think every year they seem to be learning more and more about what fans want and what they want to see moving forward. I just think these takeover games are great in terms of getting people to be wow, this is awesome. We could sell this sport and this league to this fan base or this fan base or this fan base. That's what I like seeing.
Yeah.
So that was really cool last night that I saw. I don't think there's really anything else. It's been actually kind of a quiet. Because really now, we're not hearing rumors. I mean, we did talk about Mitch Marner, but we're not really talking. all of our focus is on the games ahead and focusing on the playoffs and going from there.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I mean, it's going to be fairly quiet. Like last week was fairly quiet. I mean, too, like outside of the Flames game against the Canucks, but shootout, whatever. Yeah. No, I think that's a good place to wrap it up. So we'll be back on Thursday recapping these next two games. Thursday night we'll get you set. Obviously, big one. Devils and Flames should be a good one. I know we're going to be live. I know we're going to be water bottle. I know we're going to be live tomorrow night, Rangers and Flames. So we'll be live. I'll be there with Jimmy. Are you going to be there too?
I may. Still gotta check out my schedule and everything.
Whatever.
So,
all good.
It's always a damn schedule thing in this industry.
I know. And then from my understanding, is I'm good for Thursday.
I am as well. So let's just do it. I think it would be fun. Let's just do it.
All right. So you'll see me twice this week then on THPN at least. Tomorrow with Jimmy, celebrating turning 28 on Wednesday. Can't wait.
Good God.
Horrifying. I hate it. I absolutely hate it.
I didn't realize you were not that much younger than I was.
I don't.
Because I turned 28 in June.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's funny, like I don't like to be in your to still be in my 20s is like, and same thing for you, is like, okay.
Yeah.
Like
you still have optimism.
Oh, I have optimism.
I have optimism. Then when you hit that 30 mark, then you're like, wow, my life is a shambling disaster.
Oh, it can hit 30. I think it starts when you hit 40.
Really? Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think 30 for a lot of people is like where I don't want to say you like mature, but like you really, really focus in on like instead of like grinding, like a lot of us in the 20s like do every day. In 30s, you then start to focus on like what is like the most important. And that's where the balance, the creating of balance comes in. Like that's how I look at it.
That's why, like in our 20s, you can do whatever, right? Like,
right.
I don't know if I told you, but we're planning a Japan trip next summer.
You did tell me that, yeah.
Yeah. So,
I'm going away to college for my master's for a year starting in June.
Yeah, that's right. I'm getting a money jar, and we're just piling.
You have a money jar? Nice.
Oh yeah, why not?
Is it one of those? Like, is it just gonna be dollars that you put in, or are you gonna put like change in there as well? I would put change in there as well.
Bills and change, because you can always exchange them at the currency.
Well, that's the same. Do you have a bank that like you could dump the coins in?
Oh yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like you could do that.
Yeah, but like if you ever decide, like the yen over there is super cheap.
That's what I heard. Yeah, everything's like way cheaper.
Yeah, like you go to a 7-Eleven, you can have dinner for like $3.
Yeah, you can eat. You could be eating good for sure. You could be eating really good.
And I actually talked about it with my sister because they've been before, and
she
said like, we want to go back. That's how cool it was.
All right, so there you go.
Yeah, it's expensive to get there, but once you're there, it's way more affordable. Yeah. So
but
that's
should be. But this upcoming week, talking about again, wrapping up with the Flames, like this really big week, really big.
Got to start off strong here. You got to
start off tonight. Come out, guns blazing, play hard, and win the game. Because if you can get off to a start like winning in Toronto, I think that gives you a lot of confidence moving forward.
Fuck the Leafs. Let's go.
Sorry, you gotta believe, Kyle. You gotta believe.
Sorry to all the family members that are Leaf fans. All right, let's wrap it up. We will catch you all Thursday. We'll get you ready for a Thursday night good game. That's gonna be good, and then we'll be live Thursday night.
Everyone enjoy a happy and safe St. Patrick's Day for those that celebrate.
Absolutely.
I don't know if everybody's a corned beef and cabbage person. I am not.
Ooh, shepherd's pie though.
My dad doesn't make that, unfortunately. I could go to the store and get one of those things. I could. I will do one thing. I will get a beer and I will put green food coloring in it, and I'll get that.
Don't have Guinness though, because it's not the same as in Ireland.
I had Guinness. I had a Guinness yesterday watching soccer, so I'm good. I already had my.
Okay. Oh, so you had your fill. Okay, good.
I had my fill. It's a dark, it's the thing that will knock you out.
Are you a dark beer guy?
Yeah, 100%.
I'm a lighter beer guy.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm not very picky with beer. So whatever people want me to try, I will try.
I'm in the same boat.
I think Miller Lite might be the only beer I don't like.
That's funny because I have a whole thing of Miller Lite in the fridge.
I like Levat Blue like a lot.
Blue's good. Yeah, well, that blue's good. Yeah, like just whatever. I like the light beers, like 4 or 5%. It's usually
Also, shout out to all the Tim Hortons that have now come into New Jersey. Really appreciate that. Makes my life that much easier.
Do they do roll up the rim?
I don't know if they do or not because you'll find this funny. All of the Tim Hortons are at gas stations on the highway. So, like, I don't know. I'd have to look. I don't even have an account, which I'm actually debating, like, creating one now.
Yeah, get one.
So
yeah, you actually get like just because of the Canadian version, like you get good points towards it. Because like you can do that. I don't know if it'll be the same for you, but you can like do they have the partnership with the NHL where you can like pick 3 players who's going to score tonight, and then you.
I think that's only a Canadian thing. If I'm
okay,
I think that's not I mean, I could be wrong. I'd have to look and. Yeah, so
it's worth it because then I can get like a free coffee.
Yeah, for sure. So, but yeah, again, everybody, and also shout out to Puck Luck Hockey. These are the guys that made this jersey for me. Go check them out. They don't sponsor us. I'm just giving them a shout out. But go check them out. They have a lot of really cool stuff: hats, jerseys, stickers, the whole 9 yards. They're the ones that made this jersey. It's actually a custom one. I have my usual number and my name on the back, but I thought it would be appropriate for today. But everybody have a great and happy Thanksgiving. What the hell?
St.
Patrick's Day. And let's get a win tonight. Let's go and get a win tonight. Let's get a little luck of the Irish. I don't know if anyone's Irish on the Flames, but probably not.
At least they're wearing their green jerseys tonight. That's disgusting.
Oh, they're wearing the St. Pat's ones, right? Oh, crap.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Whatever. All right. We'll see you all Thursday. We'll get you set then. Have a good rest of the week, and we'll